Welcome back to Small College Conversations. I'm Jim Abbott. I'm the founder of the business of small college athletics. Today, I'm joined by Steve Murray. Steve is the commissioner of the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference. Steve, thanks so much for your time today.
Well, thanks, Jim. I really appreciate it. Happy to be here and happy to talk to you once again.
Well, you say once again, the world ought to know that we've done a couple of BOSCA events in Pennsylvania, and you have been a key part of the steering committee for both of those events. So it means a lot to me, and I've enjoyed our conversations, and I'm looking forward to visiting today.
I think those events are some of the best things I've been to, Jim, especially the access for folks on campuses that don't necessarily get professional development opportunities. I think they're great, and I certainly hope they continue across the country.
Well, I appreciate that very much. So let's talk about you. I introduce you. You've been 29 years in your position as commissioner of the PSAC, but in my opinion, you have sort of a really interesting career path, where it started and where it ended up. So why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about that?
Okay, so a long time ago, I graduated from Gannett University in 1985, and then I learned about this world of collegiate administration. And at that point in the world, most collegiate athletic administrators come from the coaching world, right? So I pursued my master's degree at the United States Sports Academy in Mobile, Alabama, and I got an internship at Centenary College in Shreveport, Louisiana, which at the time was the smallest Division I school in the NCAA. Famous alums were probably the most famous, Robert Parrish, Hal Sutton. So I had an opportunity to do an internship there. And during that internship, I was hired. So the only position they had for me was the athletic trainer and equipment manager. So I started with that and then volunteered my time also as an assistant baseball coach. I had played a little bit at Gannon up in Erie in my first couple of years in school, but I learned quickly that I was not very good. But I enjoyed coaching. So I did kind of all of those three things. And then after 3 years, the sports information director position came open. And it was offered to me as well to keep me on board. I got along with the athletic director very well at the time. He was a really great guy. Being at Centenary was special during that period of time. Most of us were in our mid-20s to early 30s, and small school AD was somebody that just let us try to figure out what we were doing. We all worked well together and kind of almost lived together a little bit. So the sports information director was able to double my pay up to $25,000 and do that. So I stepped into that role, learned the trade. I had a great couple of staff members. Actually, one of them is now the head SID at the University of Houston, Jeff Conrad. So he was one of my interns and student workers, and he worked for me. And then after 3 years of that, I had a chance to move back to Pennsylvania. The PSAC advertised for its first full-time employee, actually, because the commissioner at the time was actually splitting time, release time. So got the job as the SID, chance to move back to Pennsylvania, where I'm from, where my wife's from, Central PA. In fact, we're only 70 miles from where we grew up here in Lock Haven, which is where our office is still. So I got a chance to move back and create, I think I was about the third full-time SID in Division II in conference office. So they're talking 33 years ago. So it's evolved since then. At that point, most are just commissioners and a part-time SID. I was the first full-time in our office. And then now we're seeing offices grow tremendously. But after 3 years, the commissioner left. I was named interim for the first year and then got the position at the end of the search process, which is a long and interesting story. But and then I, thought, well, to me, a kid growing up in Pennsylvania, almost every one of my teachers went to one of my schools. I went to one of our schools. My wife went to one of our schools. My brother-in-law went to my schools. You know, two sisters went to one of my schools. So it's, to me, it was the land. I didn't have, I didn't have expectations to move to Division I. I saw what Division I was like at Centenary, which was, kind of a crazy aspect of, they shouldn't have been in Division I. Later on, they realized that. Now they're in Division III and doing very well in where they were. But never liked that aspect. Love the aspect of Pennsylvania, the schools that are up here. And now we have, of course, a school that's in West Virginia, but very close to our border. But I've loved every minute of it. Loved living here. I'm a Central PA guy and, grew up in the woods. So no better place to be.
I can't help but smile. So you were an athletic trainer at Centenary. Did you know anything about athletic training?
I took a couple classes in graduate school once I knew I was going to have to do that. No, so it was it come a full circle. I was telling somebody yesterday, I said, I started this business 33 years. Well, actually another 40 years ago, 39 years ago, I was an uncertified athletic trainer. Think about that lawsuit waiting to happen.
Oh my gosh. So now when all these people call me and say, Jim, I'm struggling to find trainers, I'm just going to tell them, call Steve.
Uncertified is probably going to be a little bit of sticking point at this point.
I am also smiling, Steve, because I'm imagining you calling your dad and say, you're not going to believe it. I just doubled my salary to $25,000.
Yes. Yeah. And, I'm the youngest of six. My father was pretty old when I was born, and the most he ever made was $9,000. So, he would thought I was his gravy train. Got to be able to retire early.
Well, our experiences are similar. It's starting in sports when you're young and can live really cheaply and work all day, all night, has advantages, because I think what you did is you just sort of proved to them that we're better having this Murray kid around.
Yeah. My mother said to me, and actually local TV did a story about me, following me in the game with athletic training and sports information all underneath me in the game. And I remember the quote, they said, why do you do this? I said, well, my mother told me, get as much experience in as many things as you possibly can and make yourself worthwhile. And nobody will get rid of you. And that's was great advice.
Oh, it's great advice, and it's so applicable to the small college experience. Times have changed since then, depending on the campus. Some Division II schools in particular have much broader staffs than they had back then. But I agree. I always say you have to do these sort of unglamorous tasks with a good attitude.
Yep.
Because someday, if you meet your goal of leading a department or leading a conference, you'll understand why those little things are so critical to the success of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yep.
Okay, so fast forward through that wonderful history, and after 29 years as the commissioner of the PSAC, you're announcing that you're going to be retiring.
Yes.
So when you first of all, when I retired, everybody congratulated me.
Yeah.
I always felt a little weird, like, what did I accomplish? I think they were just congratulating me for not having to be responsible for things anymore. But when you look back at your time, what are some of the accomplishments that maybe you're most proud of, and what are some of the challenges that you remember?
Accomplishments for us, I think the idea of our conference for better part of 55 years was only 14 state universities. And I started to see conversations about membership, maybe people changing, going away. I talked to our presidents about the idea of creating the corporation, because at the time we were under the state system of higher education. I was actually an employee of the state system of education, and they thought it was very intriguing. So to change, it was a difficult process to change more about minds than actually bringing schools in. it makes sense now. But when we brought Gannon and Mercyhurst in 07, I think a lot of people thought this is crazy. But I think 10 years from now, they'll say, weren't they always there? Because the geography of our state is such that, Pennsylvania has the second most Division II schools in the country. So for us to be more involved with each other, it makes the most sense. And so dealing with those changes of membership and then taking the conference outside into a corporation, I think has been good. We've done a lot with our academic sides of things. We've created a lot more awards. We've recognized in academics. We talk a lot about the mission of the league as being its foundation is education of Pennsylvanians primarily, and making sure that we're doing well in education. And for largely state universities, our schools do outstanding. We're always at the top of those, and I think we highlight that and make that an important aspect of what we do. We're in good financial situation right now. When I got the conference, we had $5,000 in the bank. Now we have a nice reserve set aside in case rainy days happen, and we know that in 2020 during COVID, rainy days happen. So we were prepared for that. I think as well, we talk a little bit about the internal mission about making sure that our student athletes get more than an education, but an experience and an opportunity that goes on beyond their job. So I actually recently talked to a student athlete at a football game, and he was an accountant in the Philadelphia area now, and he was standing on the sideline rooting on his team. I said, well, what did you learn? He said, I'll tell you, I probably learned more about being a good employee out here on the game and practice field than I did in the classroom, because they're teaching me their accounting practices. But football taught me how to show up, how to work with others, how to be part of a team. And he said, those are probably the values that are most important in my job right now than noting the debit and ledger side of the ledgers. So that makes me feel good when I hear kids talk like that.
Oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, I know a little bit about some of the challenges that the Pennsylvania State higher education has had.
Yes.
So I think I would assume in reflection, you're feeling really good about your idea to separate and
Yes.
reincorporate.
Right. And I think it allowed us to have conversations, actually probably some smarter financial practices, because when you work for states, they sometimes add a little bureaucracy to the process. But it allowed us to think about membership differently, about how we handle our business side of things. People always say to me, what's the most presidents actually, what's the most challenging thing in your job? And I always say the Susquehanna River, which cuts the north and the Pennsylvania east and west. So we have essentially 9 schools on the eastern side of the state and 9 schools on the western side of the state, and how the history of those schools and how they are funded differently. Some were Division II, some were NAI, some were Division III back in the 60s, 70s, and the history of that. And sometimes that's probably the biggest challenge, is getting us to think, yes, we're different, but we're the same. And of course nowadays, working with what the future of higher education looks like can be challenging. So we have to be prepared for that and talk about that and be prepared to handle what could be membership changes.
Yeah, I appreciate that your response to the president wasn't the hardest part is dealing with presidents.
It's one of the reasons I've been here for 29 years, Jim's not having stupid answers like that.
Well, there's a reason you're in that job instead of me, because I've been known to be a little too blunt. So as I look at the conference, and you've touched on this a little bit, one of the themes that I've seen has really been growth. As you mentioned, you sort of started with this. It was basically just you're a state school and you're in our conference. That was sort of the decision-making process. But over the years, you have systematically added schools.
Yes.
You've had schools, I know of at least one that decided to transition to Division One, perhaps others that have maybe made other decisions. So membership has been uh, an important theme for you. So can you talk a little bit about the strategy of membership over the years and what you're trying to accomplish and maybe what your peers are trying to accomplish?
Well, for us, it's a lot of it is, even numbers, and being large enough in our sports sponsorship to meet the financial needs of our institutions. I think that as we looked at schools and 16, and our main point when we had 18 full members, 16 were football playing, and football is obviously very important. So whenever we look at membership, football is critical to that issue. We had an institution right about the time Mansfield University had dropped football about 2010, 2011, just a little bit before that. So we suddenly found ourselves without an institute, short a football school. And for a couple of years, we had CW Post as an associate member, which was difficult for our schools. Post it's on Long Island. This is a very expensive trip.
Yeah.
So shortly after that, the West Virginia Intercollegiate Athletic Conference was starting to fall apart a little bit, and some of them were forming the Mountain East, and we were looking for some balance as well. My fear at the time was that they could form two separate conferences down there, and so Pitt Johnstown at the time reached out to us first. They didn't have football. Pitt Johnstown reached out, and I said, well, you make a lot of sense because we have Mansfield without football. So you'd be in Western Division school, Mansfield would be in Eastern Division school, but you're going to need to bring somebody else with you. And they contacted Seton Hill, which is in Pennsylvania. It was the only West Virginia school with football in Pennsylvania at the time. So they reached out, and by that afternoon, the president of Seton Hill had called me and said, we would be very interested in joining as well. So that took about 5 months to pave through. It made a lot of sense as well. It helped us solidify sports sponsorship numbers. So for those who are not completely aware, and so obviously Division II folks, conferences get financial resources from grants from the NCAA based on sports sponsorship. So you want to keep your numbers high enough in each of your sports so you get a distribution for each of those sports. And so both of those schools helped us with that. Pitt Johnstown and wrestling. Seton Hill has lacrosse and tennis and men's golf, women's golf. So those helped us with our numbers. So it really helped us financially as well to keep income coming into the conference that if we lost would go back on the backs of the other members in our conference. So it helps us with our income to be able to do the things we can do in our championships by keeping our sports sponsorship numbers up as well as our membership numbers up.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me. Conference membership, I would equate it to a marriage. We're all in this together. But then the phone rings. and what I feel like what I experienced in my 20 years, it was just a little bit of the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
So in your case, we need another school that plays these sports. And so sometimes as you're looking to find that school, and maybe you make a call and say, hey, would you be interested? And well, in fact, they are interested. Then it just sort of creates the ripple that now I'm looking for a school and now they're going to look for a school. And so I haven't done any of the research on how many changes have happened, but there have been a lot.
Yeah, there has been, and we've been on both sides of that equation.
Yeah.
It's not pleasant either way. you're making somebody mad. If you're taking their school away and you're mad if someone's taking yours away, it is a difficult time. You hope that there's communication. Sometimes it's better than others that I've seen, and I've seen my colleagues around the country have those difficult conversations or not have them, and then it's a little bit of a chilly conversation later. I'm not sure what the real answer is, other than to remind ourselves as commissioners, we answer to presidents and institutions, and we've got to put them in the best position possible. Sometimes that can be uncomfortable for us with our colleagues and other institutions.
Yeah, I just clearly remember sitting in the room with presidents from our conference, and we had one president who said, let's all sign a pledge that we're going to stay together for 5 years. And 2 years later, that president, his school, were gone.
Yeah.
So with that sort of thought in mind, what I have also seen conferences do is they've sort of learned from the pain of all this coming and going, and in many cases have instituted fairly substantial exit fees. Has that been something that you've adopted over the years?
Yes. We've done a couple things. One was, once you're in, there's in our bylaws a substantial fine if you leave, triple damages if you leave before 7 years, if you came in. And then there is now, and we adopted initially, we're still refining an exit fee. We learned just recently that what we were doing, there's probably not a number. If you're going to go to Division I, there's probably not a number from a Division II conference that would be reasonable, that's going to keep somebody from doing that. If you're going to move to Division I, if a Division II conference says it's $1 million fine, they're going to find $1 million. It's a question of what's ethically, what can you ask to protect yourself for those of you remaining. And I think that's been the conversation that we've switched from in our league. Is it's not a punishment to this school. It's what would we need for a couple years to help schools with scheduling if they needed it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been a mind shift for me that we really, for, almost 60 years of this league, didn't even have to have.
Yeah.
In fact, Jim, when we started this conversation about when Gannon and Mercier, so we didn't have any bylaws about coming into or leaving the league. There was not one league. All it said was, here's the members. There was, so I said, we're going to have to rewrite our entire constitution here.
Yeah, well, in the old days, I don't think anybody thought about it. Yeah,
Right.
There wasn't. I mean, some of that happened, but I appreciate the way you framed it. That you're really looking at reparations for damage caused to members. I believe in my heart that part of it is, let's create a deterrent. Let's create one more thing that makes them think, wait a minute. We don't want to leave. We don't want to come up with $50,000, $75,000, $200,000 to pay. So the whole thing is intriguing to me. And so what I've sort of seen, maybe not nationally, but certainly in specific areas, I've seen schools that have transitioned that maybe have joined a D2 conference, and they thought this will be great for us. But then they get to the conference, and 2 or 3 of the people they saw themselves hanging out with and competing with then leave.
Right.
And now you're in a conference that really doesn't look like what you thought it would be, and you've signed the 7-year pledge.
Yeah.
So we could probably talk about that forever, but
it's all fairly new to me. I mean, it really. I mean, when my colleagues talked about membership before, I almost tune it out during those meetings, portions because and then all of a sudden it hits and you're like, oh, I wish I had maybe paid attention a little bit better. But we've managed through it pretty well. I'm happy where we are. The big news this past year for us was reaching out and working with a 2-year athletic program, Lackawanna College in Scranton, Pennsylvania, to join. They'll apply for Division II membership next fall. And working through that process with them. So we've got to get them ready next fall to apply. And in the meantime, Monroe College, which is actually Lackawanna's main rival in their junior college league, has been accepted to application for the Central Atlantic, which is our bordering schools in New Jersey, Connecticut, and even in Pennsylvania, to join as well. So we're going to be bringing two-year athletic programs to Division II next year. So I think it'll be helpful that we're doing it together, both conferences. In fact, we met just before the Christmas break to devise a plan and look at the loopholes and the issues that we have to attack. But I think it might be an answer a little bit for Division II. It's important to note they're both 4-year schools. They give master's programs, they give 4-year degrees. They have just chosen to have 2-year athletic programs. So the transition, I think, academically is going to be okay. Financially, frankly, we looked at their books at Lackawanna, and they're probably in better shape than a lot of schools around here already. So yeah. I think we're happy, and it gives us Scranton, Pennsylvania for the first time, which is one of the larger cities in Pennsylvania. So we're hopeful that helps us as well.
Yeah, well, I know the NAIA has added 2 or 3 2-year schools in recent history as well, and so that will be an interesting trend to sort of follow. I want to switch gears a little bit. For the person that just is sort of loosely aware of college athletics, 2 things come to mind for them immediately: transfer portal, NIL. So, have the advent of the portal and NIL, what impact do you see them having on Division II?
I don't know that it's hit us a lot. I mean, we've got a lot of kids entering portals. We went in and did some research, and just before the Christmas holiday, actually Thanksgiving holiday, the kids in Division II were entering in, and there's a lot of scuttlebutt in our league. And I went in and I showed the data for historically. It's only about 20 to 25% of our student athletes have entered the portal in the last few years. And then actually only a third of those were landing any place. Then I looked at the portal coming into our league, and we actually have a net gain from the numbers coming in that have entered the portal then have gone out. So it's actually, in a way, you can make the argument it's been positive for us. Now, you're losing some student athletes. I get that. I don't, maybe in a way I'm old school as far as, I don't necessarily love what's going on as far as the transfer after transfer after transfer, but I don't mind kids finding places to play. I'm completely okay with that. I wish we'd figure out a way to go back to say you get to do it once, you can't do it twice.
Yeah.
Because I think the education value's gone after the second time. I just think that's now we're not getting education, and our philosophy in our league is about getting education. So that's the problem. The NIL, I haven't seen a lot yet in our league. There are places that have it. There's some student athletes that have it. It might be the sub shop downtown that says, hey, tweet our Joe's sub shop 3 times, and we'll get you we'll give you a free meal every Saturday after the game. Student athlete A. I don't think we have a lot of money flowing yet. It could happen. I'm sure that there's going to be more intense levels of pressure as we see things around the country. I'm hoping that we don't. Our schools struggle financially enough as it is. Any free money's going to go to just running the programs and paying salaries and having athletic training services and stuff like that. So I haven't felt it. There hasn't been a lot of conversation or concern internally. The portal, yes, but when you really go into the numbers, I don't think it's as devastating at our level, or at least for our conference, as we've seen. Yes, we've lost good players to Division I institutions, but good for them. Hey, we had a kid that set the conference's 100-meter record in track and field last year. He's also a wide receiver at one of our member institutions, and he's got several Division I offers, and he's going to make some money and get a better shot. You know what? go for it.
Yeah, way to go. And then on the other hand, there are people who enter the portal with this idea of a brighter, better future, but don't really get any opportunities.
And that's about 60% of them.
Yeah.
So we've been trying to put that message out saying, hey, you go here, it might not be, grass is not necessarily greener over there. No, make sure you're doing this for the right reasons, and particularly your education.
Yeah, there's just so many gray areas. When I relate it to my experience, for example, I could have just quit and told the world, okay, I'm available. Who wants to hire me?
Right.
I never did because, it's like, why would I leave a good situation with uncertainties out there in the world? And then at the same time, in theory, you're not supposed to be having conversations about other opportunities while you're committed to my institution. And so we could probably talk about that forever. I agree with you. This multiple transferring thing just doesn't feel right.
No.
And then I always sort of stop and think, well, I guess a coach could leave every year for a new job making more money. And if a coach can do it, why would we stop anybody else from doing it?
I get both sides of the argument. I think my only thing I've hung my hat on so far is because the idea is about education.
Yeah.
You got to be working degree. Maybe you get a second one, but you have to wait a year. I don't know. I just think that there's something about it, but I'm all for having pretty liberal. I'm probably, not probably everybody loves the idea that I'm saying, but I'm for kids playing where they want to play. I just don't know that they understand what their realities are. I think that's another thing. I had this conversation with my son, who's 34 years old recently and has a couple of kids. And, I remember him playing football. He played at one of our member institutions and laughing about kids that were in his locker room at a Division II level as wide receivers saying, hey, I want to play in the NFL. And he's like, you do realize we only throw 5 times a game and 3 of those are to the tight end, right? You got a reality check on where you are exactly here,
Yeah. Well, common sense never got in the way of a dream though, right?
No, a lot of us think we're better than we are.
Well, okay. So I have a final question for you. It's kind of a biggie. You've been very involved, like me, you've been very involved beyond your conference. You've been on the D2 Management Council. You've chaired the D2 Conference Commissioners Association. So you've had your finger on the pulse of what's happening. When you look at the state of college athletics, what do you see as the biggest challenges moving forward? And what, as you retire, is there anything that you look at and say, man, I'm glad I'm not going to have to deal with this?
I think a couple of the topics that you just raised a little bit, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that. To me, well, let me first say, I think Division II is in the best place of the 3 divisions in the National Association, in the NCAA. I don't know where the NAIA is much, but of the 3 divisions, listening to, and I have the benefit of knowing many of my Division III colleagues, because I think Pennsylvania has 8 Division III conferences within it. So I meet with them every summer and have great conversations. The division and divisiveness in Division III and the division and divisiveness in Division I don't really feel in Division II. There's a little bit here, but the I guess the bell-shaped curve of our thinking is more vertical, a sharp, everybody's more punched together in the middle. Yes, there's outliers on where the philosophy should be, but I think that our philosophy is more together in Division II. We're going to have our challenges. I think there's schools fighting this Division I move around the country. There's conferences. I think that's going to be a big issue of existence and where that goes. Division I could help us all out by creating such high hurdles to keep those folks out that maybe shouldn't belong there. But I don't know that they'll do that because they want to have somebody that they can beat. I wonder about I wonder about the future of football within the NCAA. I almost think football could be pulled out and created a National Collegiate Football Association, take it out of the NCAA, take some headaches out of the NCAA, and maybe develop 5 or 6 classifications. That's speculation. If I were king, I might have that conversation. It's like, okay, well, what if football was not part of the NCAA? Because that seems to be where the finances and the problems are, and let it operate on its own. So if a school in my league wants to go be a football and play with Penn State, go do it. All the other sports are with us. I don't know that that's the worst thing that we could talk about. Kind of unusual, I admit, but I think I love football, but I worry about the future of where it sits within the entire collegiate framework. I also worry about what the future of higher education looks like. We having the conversation in our league. We have 2 sets of 3 combined campuses under one campus, and you could be completely online, sitting in one's campus and playing, sitting on a campus. You could be taking classes at a completely other campus, but playing sports for this one. That's an out of the box stuff that we've got to be able to handle. What's the future of 3-year degrees? Getting people out faster so they can not have as much debt. Those are all things I think that we have to look at nationally as to what the future of intercollegiate athletics looks like.
Okay, so you talk about 3-year degrees, which there's a lot of common sense there at a time when we're talking about a 5th year of eligibility.
Yeah.
So which one of those is the wrong thought?
Yeah. Well, we're going to find that out here in a couple of weeks.
Don't give it away that we're taping this before the NCAA convention.
Oh, sorry.
I was trying to put you on the spot there. Let me ask a different question, because earlier you said we try to strengthen our sports sponsorship because NCAA funding is tied to sports sponsorship.
Yes.
Is there any fear NCAA funding is going to be greatly reduced or go away?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing to have in your back of your minds. We saw it happen during COVID. We got, there's a potential of lost revenue there. I think every conference, I know what our conference did. We sat down and we developed an optional plan. If the NCAA money goes away, what would we do? Well, instead of a 12-team basketball tournament, we'd have a 4-team basketball tournament. Instead of a 2-day indoor track meet, we'd probably have a 1-day track meet. Our schools, it's not going to change how our schools run their business. Now, would they have to absorb some of those costs differently? Would we schedule less contests to save money? So we have a plan if that happens. I mean, we have options. We know we have written down if, option A, option B, option C. If, do you want to pick up the full amount that the NCAA revenue lost? Do you want to pick half of it, or do you want to pick, none of it, So we have that plan in place. I think anybody that doesn't have that in the back of their mind someplace in writing, it's just a 1-pager for us. I think you're crazy as a conference commissioner, because I think there's some realities there. Maybe what I was telling about the football, that changes the whole complexion. Actually, the NCAA gets no money from football anyway, so that wouldn't change it. It's what happens. And I don't think, and it might be even better for football to be out so the NCAA can concentrate on the basketball and the remaining portion of it. And then maybe that stabilizes the whole rest of the picture. Let football go make its own money and do its own thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming if you asked your people, you talked about the 3 levels, A, B, or C, and C was we don't want to pick up any of it.
Yeah.
The answer right now is we don't want to pick up any of it. We want to keep it the way it's going. I appreciate that you have a plan. What I immediately think about is dues have to increase, entry fees have to increase,
Right.
and I'm not, I don't have any inside information. What I think is, I see Division I schools spending, looking at private equity options. So they're all looking for millions of more dollars,
Yeah.
and they succeeded in taking the football money. I'm
Yep.
just wondering if the next thing in line would be the basketball money, and if so,
Yeah.
that has repercussions for everybody.
Well, it certainly does. The football money was never part of the equation, though. So it was never something that anybody had their mind set on, or we all turned our heads back when it federated at the time. The basketball money constitutionally would be problematic within the association. There would be lawsuits. There would be significant lawsuits from our membership levels to the NCAA saying, hey, you said we were allowed 4.79% of the income. You can't take that away. Now, does that mean the Power Four goes someplace else? Maybe, but I think they need the association in order to play contests. They also need, I think those Power Four need the rest of us to sit under the umbrella of education, because let's face it, those folks are playing football and basketball at that level. It's about professional sports for them.
Yeah.
They need the guys and the tax protection of the rest of us.
The beautiful thing about being retired, Steve, whichever way this goes, you and I will just watch from the sidelines and
Yep.
hope for the best. And I really don't know. I will say what all old people say, which is, I sure do miss those simpler times of old, to some extent. And there's a lot about what we do now that I really appreciate and embrace. But the business of higher education is so much tougher.
Yeah.
And the role that athletics plays has evolved pretty significantly as it relates to the business.
Yes.
And so, so to close, I just want to say to you, I'm so grateful for people like you, that not just the time and years that you've invested in the profession, but the heart that you have to give back, to mentor, and to try to impact in a positive way what we're doing. So as we're wrapping our time up today, I just want to say thank you for that, and wonder, are there any final comments that you have?
No, I've loved every minute of it. Like I said earlier, being a Pennsylvania kid, getting to live here and work with these schools in my league, and I believe that they have the right balance of athletics and education and the priority of the mission of educating our kids. I couldn't have landed in a better place and been here, found a better place for my personality and what I think is important in the world.
Well, they're better for having your impact and leadership, as am I. So a big thanks again to Steve Murray for joining us today. And we invite you to join us for our next episode of Small College Conversations.